Michelle Nesky, the Posh PA, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to categorize your experiences within CASPA, the PA school application. There are a lot of categories in which you can list your experiences in the supporting materials section of the application. And sometimes it's confusing to know what experience to put in what category, so I'm going to break that down for you today. But before I do that, if you haven't already, smash the subscribe button. You know I'm here every week dropping new videos to help you get into PA school, become a successful student, and a fulfilled practicing PA. All right, so within the PA school application, or CASPA, as you've heard me talk about a lot on this channel, as that is the centralized application service for PA schools and applying to PA programs. If you haven't seen those videos, be sure to check them out, including a complete CASPA breakdown and walkthrough with you on this channel. But today I'm going to talk specifically about the experience section and how many areas there are to list your experiences. Now, you've been working really hard towards getting into PA school and you've gained patient care experience, maybe some healthcare experience, maybe research, teaching, shadowing, volunteer work. All of these things can be categorized within the application and should be to make you a well-rounded applicant. So there are 9 categories in which you can classify your experiences within CASPA. Those include the following: healthcare experience, patient care experience, volunteer work, shadowing, extracurricular activities, research, teaching, and non-healthcare employment, okay? So you can have all of those areas in which you are classifying information. And that was only 8. The 9th one is leadership. So let me through them one more time. And that is healthcare experience, patient care experience, volunteer work, shadowing, research, teaching, leadership, extracurriculars, and non-healthcare employment. Those are the 9 sections in which you can classify your experiences within the application. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, Michelle, I have some very clear obvious choices that I can put in those categories, but there are some of my experiences where I'm really not sure where to put them. If they are more direct patient care experience versus healthcare experience versus volunteer work. Maybe you went on a medical mission trip and that was volunteer work, but it's also healthcare experience, or maybe even patient care experience. And how do you decide how to classify that information? It really depends on the amount of hours that you have. Now, let me be very clear. Patient care experience includes direct contact with patients and in their medical care, okay? So things that include patient care experience are, patient care technicians, medical assistants, certified nurse assistants, phlebotomy, all of those things fall into patient care experience, all right? I have another video on what patient care versus healthcare experience looks like and what might fit into those categories, so be sure to check that out too. But if you are having direct contact and direct impact on patients' medical care, that is patient care experience, and that is the most valuable experience you can have in your PA school application, because most programs require patient care experience, but the average applicant that gets accepted to PA school has about 2,000 hours of patient care experience. So you definitely want to have patient care experience classified in the right place. Now, if you did more administrative work in a hospital, transporting patients, things like that, which really you weren't involved in their medical care, that is more healthcare experience. So you can separate it in that way. Now, if trying to decide if you should list something as volunteer versus, patient or healthcare experience, like a medical mission trip, for example, I would look at your total number of hours. If you already have eclipsed the 2,000 patient care hour mark and you don't have a lot of volunteer hour experience, then I would list that specifically as volunteer work. However, if you don't have a lot of patient care experience and your programs will accept volunteer patient hours, list it as patient care experience, and then underneath that, it will ask you if it's compensated or volunteer, okay? So it's really up to you and the individual applicant's situation on how you want to classify those hours that may cross a bridge, and that typically happens with volunteer work. I would tend to list volunteer work as volunteer experience outside of a situation like a medical mission trip where you might be doing a lot of patient care. Outside of that, I would do it as volunteer experience itself, because community service is actually a really big part of your application, and programs love to see that you're giving back to the community, whether it's in a medical capacity or not, okay? So that's how I would think about classifying these information. You cannot double dip your hours. What do I mean by that? You can't say that you have 500 hours of volunteer work on your medical mission trip and use those same 500 hours as patient care experience. That is double dipping, okay? So if, for example, a shadowing is a good example of this. So if you worked alongside a PA in your clinical job, that is not shadowing, okay? You are not paid when you're shadowing. So if you're working alongside a PA every single day, that is so valuable and super important experience, you cannot list that as patient care experience and shadowing experience. You can't use the same number of hours to list it in both places. That's double dipping. What you could do is take hours out of your total and say, these hours I was not being paid, I was shadowing on my own time, I'm taking those hours out of the total and putting them in the shadowing bucket. That is okay, all right? So if you are going to use some of those hours, maybe that you weren't being paid and you went on your own time, then you take them out of your total number of patient care hours and bucket them into shadowing. You just can't use those same hours for both things. A big no-no, okay? Anything that is teaching, tutoring, teaching, like a teaching assistant in a college, or you were a tutor for kids, or anything like that is going to be considered teaching experience. Research experience is one in which some people get confused as well. Research experience can really include anything that's clinical or non-clinical. However, if you are using research hours as patient care experience, then that research needs to be patient focused, meaning you need to be in a clinical research position where you are interacting with patients as part of a clinical trial, okay? It cannot be you in the lab with patient lab samples. That's laboratory research, and that is classified as research, not patient care experience, okay? So any research that you did, whether you worked in a lab or you helped a research professor or you collected data or you did surveys or all of that, you can list that under research experience. Extracurricular activities is exactly what it states. If you were an athlete, any clubs that you participated in, any fundraisers that you were part of, sororities, fraternities, all of that stuff can go in extracurricular activities. And let me tell you something, if you have a lot of extracurricular activities and you served on a leadership position, okay? So if you were a board member of an organization, or you were the organizer, director of a fundraiser, or whatever that is, take those hours and classify them as leadership, because leadership looks really strong on your application, right? Because we all want future PA leaders, okay? So think about those things when you're categorizing as well. So if you held a position, you were the president of something, you directed something, you organized something, you created a fund, you created an event, those things should be listed under leadership experience and not as extracurricular. So there are a lot of different ways you can categorize your experience, and you want to be sure that you're really highlighting your experiences to support your application. So if you have that leadership, don't leave it out. Leadership experience is great, but you also want to be sure that you're not double dipping your hours and that you're putting them in the right place. Now, don't stress too much about this. Obviously, I'm here to help, as well as the other Posh PA coaches, and we can always help you classify your experiences if you're not sure, within your application. You can always book a session with us on my website at michellenesky.com, or reach out to me through my website or through here, and I can help you categorize your experience. It's pretty straightforward when it comes to the other things like non-healthcare employment. If you worked in a restaurant, or if you worked in a coffee shop or something like that, or maybe if you were even a nanny or a babysitter, you can list that as non-healthcare employment if it was meaningful and relevant to your application, where you were dealing with people, managing conflicts, customer service. All of that really plays a huge part in healthcare and being able to manage conflict resolution and all of those different things too. So don't necessarily count it out if you think it's not 100% relevant, because it just might be. Whenever you're dealing with people, this is a customer service business as well. And so you want to be able to highlight that strength of being able to manage those stressful situations. So don't discount your non-healthcare employment all the time, okay? Again, there are 9 categories to list. You don't need something from every single category. You want to make sure that your application is standing out and that you're categorizing things appropriately, but you certainly don't want to be stressing out about having something in every single category. You most likely will, because you'll have shadowing, you'll have volunteer work, you'll have patient care experience, you'll have extracurriculars, because that's what you're working towards and that's what you're doing. But if you have questions on how to specifically categorize things, please reach out, because you want to make sure that you're doing it correctly. And the most important take-home points here are that you want to make sure that you're using your hours to your maximum capacity, so that you're really saying, this is how many hours I have of direct patient care experience. This is how many hours I have of volunteer experience, and trying to maximize those number of hours in each of those categories to really help your application be well-rounded. And so if you're struggling to really think about healthcare versus patient care, go ahead and watch that other video I have here on my channel, which kind of breaks that down for you a little bit more. If you still have questions, you know you can always reach out to me. I am here every week with new videos. You can always reach out to me at michelle.theposhpa on any of my social media channels as well. I'll see you soon.